Can someone just verify that it's recording?
Yeah.
I can't see
Yeah.
anything on my end. All right, cool.
We can see.
Welcome everyone to FMA's April 15, 2021 meeting. Glad to have everyone here. We're gonna move through this real quick. As usual, the extra credit and sign-in form will be at the end, and look out for the link from the VPs of membership in the chat. Today's agenda, quick weekly updates, and then we're gonna have our Google ProDev. And if Gabby wants to talk about the members of the month.
We want to congratulate the March members of the month. First is Kevin. We noticed your contributions that you made to your team during the case competition and actively participating during the workshops. Next is Keith. We appreciate your active participation at the weekly meetings and asking great questions to the speakers. Once again, congratulations to both of you.
Yeah, congratulations, guys. As for upcoming meetings, next week, April 22nd, we'll be having ServiceNow FDRP coming in. April 29th, we have Lockheed Martin's ProDev. And on May 6th, we're actually going to have our Jeopardy night. So definitely be on the lookout for that, as it's going to be our last social and our last meeting. Josie wants
Hi,
to.
everyone. Yeah, okay, so I just wanted to remind everyone that Officer apps are now open. So I'm going to put the link in the chat for the steps you need to take to apply, but I encourage everyone to apply because some roles have more than one position open. And if you're interested in being more involved on campus and also in FMA and also gain some leadership skills, that'll be great. So I'm gonna put the link in the chat. And it'll be due on Thursday, April 29th, which will be our Lockheed Martin meeting. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, guys. And here's our socials as usual. Be sure to turn on your post notifications for Instagram, Discord, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And we're very active on those, so be sure to look out for any posts there. And please welcome Krista and Tony from Google. They're going to be taking care of the rest of the meeting from here. I'm going to
Hey everyone.
share.
Okay, cool. I am doing this from my iPad, so let me know if people can't see anything. So a fun fact just to get started is we all use all Google products at Google. That includes Google Hangouts and Google Sheets. So for those who are in finance, for better or for worse, we don't use Excel as much as we use Google Sheets and so on for slides. So it always takes us a minute just to connect back over to Zoom. So give me 1 second. Hey, Tony, do you actually want to kick off with your intro? Intro while I'm getting all this up? Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. I'm happy to do that. So hello, everybody. And like Krista said, I'm so used to working off of Google products. I'm working from my phone on the Zoom. So I wish I could see all of you right now, but unfortunately I can't at the moment. But my name is Tony Francis. I am the program manager for our finance rotation program at Google. And so what that means is we have a 2-year entry-level program for finance and accounting majors where we hire you directly from university and bring you in, train you up, and turn you into a good finance professional. And so Krista is in her 2nd year, I guess you can call a senior class of our rotation program currently. I've been at Google for 6.5 years now, and I've been in this role for going on 4 years, but my background is in accounting and finance. So I was an accounting major when I was in my undergraduate, and eventually went to work at PricewaterhouseCoopers, started my career there actually in transfer pricing, and then made a few stops along the way before I got to Google. So I worked at a small startup in Atlanta, Georgia, then moved to Dallas, Texas, where I worked at Chuck E. Cheese, actually, of all places, in their corporate headquarters. And then from there, I went to Xerox. And so I was able to to kind of navigate my way to Google, which was not a straight path, nor one that I had planned out early on in my career. So I always like to tell everyone, like right out the gate, is, if even if Google doesn't become the thing that you're doing right now, it doesn't mean that it can't be the thing that's perfect for you later. And so, whatever that company is, whatever organization you're aspiring to be a part of, don't get discouraged if your path doesn't immediately take you there right out the gate. So yeah, that's one of the things I always like to mention to everyone. And it looks like Krista is getting the presentation up now.
Okay, cool. I hate being this person, but if anybody else knows how to use this better than I do, and if I'm doing something very not the way to do it, please let me know. Like Tony said, we all are not the best at Zoom. Okay, anyways, we'll go ahead and we'll start here. But thanks so much for Tony for kicking it off. So hi everyone, I'm Krista. Like Tony said, I'm a current associate in the program. And so thank you all for having us here. We're excited to talk to all of you. We're excited to get to know all of you. We are here to kind of talk about three things today. We want to give you all a brief background of kind of, some fun facts, play some Google trivia, and just to really show you guys what Google as a company stands for, then talk about the finance role, and then do application process overview, answer any questions. So we'll definitely have time for Q&A at the end of our presentation. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I recognize, because I'm not presenting, that all of these answers may be given away. So pretend like you don't know. And again, if anybody knows how to share my screen, please let me know. So actually, I'll give a second. Does anyone know how I can make this full screen?
Can you click on the present mode in the
it's
top?
not,
Is it not working?
it's not going. I like pride myself on being tech savvy too. So this really is not going my way. Hopefully everyone's enjoying it. Okay, anyways, we'll just roll with it. So first off, just to cover Google's mission. So to organize the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful is kind of what we all strive for at Google, regardless of which product area you're in. Being in finance, we both support different teams, different orgs, and especially as an associate who's explored different parts of the company, which I can get into a little bit later, this is something that I've seen consistent across every single team that I've been on. So even though it is a big company with a lot of different initiatives and a lot of different products, it is nice to all come back and be focused on the same goal and mission. So next, with that, Googlers have meaningful impact. So along those lines, right? So things you work on don't just reach millions or billions of users, they have a profound impact on people's lives. And so Tony and one of my really good friends from college both recently participated in our Google certifications. I can't see all of you, but raise of hands for the three people who I can't actually see. Have you guys heard of this? Yes. Okay. I see 2 nods, 3 nods. Oh my gosh. Thank you for, for helping me out here. So if you guys haven't heard about it, there are these amazing classes. Our very own Tony helps teach the data analyst track. And so it's a 6-month class. Really, you can learn a brand new skill, whether that's project management, data analytics, there's a ton. So really helpful, especially for college. If you guys have some extra time, it might be a good idea to go ahead and check it out. So with that, how many employees does Google have? So we actually, as you can see on this map, we have a ton of people. So we have around 133,000 Googlers globally. And so similar to college, right? You see somebody with an SJSU sweatshirt at an airport, in the city walking around, like people will go up and say, hey, like I work at Google too. All the time. And I've made a lot of connections just, happening to walk around San Francisco and seeing somebody else with the Google sweatshirt on. And so I've been to a bunch of different offices. One of the fun things is that as a Google employee, you can actually go into any of those other offices. So when I was in New York before the pandemic, I went to the New York office. I grew up in Los Angeles. I've been to the LA offices. So, it is fun to go ahead and experience that Googliness and that Google experience, as I'm sure you guys have seen in photos, in different places. And I know Tony has been to a bunch of international offices, which I am very jealous of and plan to do after COVID's over. So Tony, do you have a favorite international or domestic office that you've been to?
Oh man. Usually I kind of rank offices based on food.
That's
And
fair.
so it's that's usually where the gold standards lie. So the current Atlanta office is really small, but the food is phenomenal there. It's to the point that like because there's less than 100 people in that office. When I went there during the holidays, the chef came out the kitchen and basically asked me what I want. And because he was like, there's only gonna be like 15 of us here tomorrow. And he was like, are you gonna be here tomorrow? I was like, it was maybe 2 or 3 days, like 3 days before Christmas. And I was like, yeah, I'll probably come in around lunch and then, hang out for a couple hours and then head back. And I've got a bunch of family in Atlanta, so that's why we were there. And he was just like, oh, what do you want? And I was joking. I was like, oh, let me get some lobster and some steak. And he was like, oh, all right. So I get there the next day and he actually had made like lobster macaroni and then had like venison steak. And I mean, it was delicious.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I just was fat boy heaven.
Oh
So
yeah.
he solidified Atlanta on like my number one food office, but Dublin, London are fantastic. I've been to Poland. The Poland offices are really small, so it's not as they don't have all the amenities. But well, at least in Krakow, the Warsaw office is a much bigger one. But in Krakow, it's in a really cool location. So it's like in the city center and like a very historic area within Krakow, which was really cool. So yeah, but I'll tell you all the offices outside of the Bay Area, all of them are generally better than the Bay Area offices. Even though the Bay Area offices are tons of fun, the food and everything else is better elsewhere. So
And kind of along those lines, all the offices are themed as to like where they're located. So Tony can tell you the day that I met Tony, I've asked him to give me a tour of Atlanta. And so the Atlanta office, has musicians out there. Tony, if there's any other themes out there, let me know. But I know like
yeah,
Chicago is it used to be like an old meat packing building. So it's all, like Chicago, key icons as well as meat packing themes. So they really do keep that Google magic alive across all the offices. And I will say, one of my favorite memories before, the world went remote is Tony and I during our one-on-ones would always go downstairs to our cafe and make an affogato, if any of you guys know what that is. So we would take the vanilla ice cream from our ice cream machine and then ask a barista for an espresso shot. And we would, talk business over some amazing affogato. So lots of Google magic, regardless of wherever you are in the world.
that's right.
So yeah, so we work together, not the same, kind of along those lines, right? So you'll get the support you need so you can think big, suggest new ways of doing things, and bring your best self to Google. So it really is a safe place to bring up those ideas, question the norm, invent new processes, to automate, to come up with new solutions, whatever it may be. Even somebody who's entering in the company right out of college, the most senior folks, your voice is always heard at the table. So next, so where was Google's first office? And I actually have a fun fact I wrote down for all of you. So let me check this again. So what's really cool is, like most, I feel like Silicon Valley startups at this point, they all start in a garage, right? So this was Google's garage. It was in Menlo Park, California. And it actually belonged to Susan's family, who at the time was an IBM engineer, who now is the CEO of YouTube. So a pretty, small world. She actually joined Google as employee Sweet 16. So very full circle, all the fun facts. But with that, we're committed to your future. This program specifically that Tony manages is all about helping us grow to enable us to be the best finance professionals we can be. And, whether or not you're involved in the finance program, every role at Google, regardless of level, is focused on professional and personal development. We mentioned there's courses. All Google employees are welcome to take any classes that they want. Some can even be expensed and helped paid for by the company. For example, I've taken a few classes myself, whether it be a dance class or another business class, and Google has helped pay for it to enable me to kind of learn those new skills. And so who are Google's founders? Of course, we have Larry and Sergey, and then we default to open. So you'll be a part of a culture of transparency and accountability. And I am kind of speeding through these slides since I want to make sure we hit on everything else, since I know we ran a little bit late. And so what do we call our annual volunteering month? This is actually something I had no idea about until I got to Google, and Google Serve is what it's called. And it's actually a really fun event. Everyone at Google gets involved. Your team typically does an event together. I've gone to food banks, I volunteered at local schools. It is really cool to see how much the company shows up as a community to help and to really, do a lot. So Tony, if you have a Google Serve memory that you've done, feel free to chime in too.
Let's see. I've got a couple of Google Serve memories. So I worked, let's see, I've done a park cleanup once, and then another one we went to an elementary school, and we basically redid the entire playground. So we painted new lines for all the basketball courts. I think we changed out like basketball nets. Then some people were there like kind of trimming up the grass, and then we painted in a soccer field where it was just basically a big open field that they never had like kind of cleaned up before. So we got all the actual grass like nice and neat and all together, and then we painted out a soccer field, and then they put up some other stuff for the kids to play, and we did it all during like the first half of the morning while all the kids were still in class doing their normal thing. And so the goal was to basically get done. I think we had like 3.5 hours, something like that, before like the kindergartners came out for recess. And so it was all hands on deck. It was must have been at least 60 or 70 of us out there. And we were probably running about 5-10 minutes behind, but we essentially got everything done like by the time all the kids are going out. So it was awesome to just see their faces and their eyes light up, because when they came into school that morning, it looked like it normally does. And then by the time they came out for recess, it was like a whole new playground for them. So it was really cool to see.
That's awesome. That's a really cool one. I know it's one of the things I can't wait to get back to once everything reopens. Just add it to my tab of things I'm excited for. So with all that being said, this is kind of what Google stands for mission-wise, as well as their employees. And, as you can hear from Tony's stories, as well as my own, it really does permeate to everyone in the company, which is amazing. So before I move on to a little bit more about me, as well as, more job stuff, does anybody have any questions about Google as a company? Or if I'm not showing my slides, let me know.
No, I think we're good.
Nope. Okay, cool. Awesome. So Tony gave a little bit of his background. So I can go ahead and explain a little bit about myself. So hi, everyone. I'm Krista again. I grew up in Southern California, in Los Angeles, right by the beach. And I did not go that far to college. I went to USC. And so while I was there, I was a double major in both business administration and the business side of the entertainment industry. I thought I was going to be a producer or an agent or one of those things. And then, did a few internships and realized that finance and business was something I would much rather explore and pursue. And so following graduation, I had a job at Walt Disney Imagineering doing finance on the Star Wars land, if any of you have been there before, which was fantastic. And then came to Google over in our people ops organization, which is HR. It's kind of a different word that we all use, doing interview training there. And so I was helping work with teams, because every single person who interviews at Google has to have a specific training. So I was working with teams to get them onboarded, to get them ramped up, to help grow, but knew that I wanted to get back into finance. And so I actually found Tony in our internal, it's kind of like Facebook internal, but found him. We met for coffee, and eventually I found my way into the program, and it has been absolutely one of the best things that I've ever done for myself, career-wise, as well as personally. And so to talk a little bit about the program, as Tony mentioned, there are 4 rotations, 6 months each. I am a senior, if that's what you want to call it. And so personally for me, my rotations has been over in our controllership strategy and operations. And so what controllership means is, that's where our accounting functions, our payroll functions, and kind of those core finance functions are all being held. And then I went over to our ads finance team, working on our small, medium business ads, before going over to product in our Google One finance team. If anybody's ever heard of it, it's kind of our storage option, iCloud type option over at Google before my final rotation, which I'm in right now, which is our real estate deals finance team. So that's a little bit about my background. If anybody has any questions about Tony and my background before we kind of dive in to the next part of the presentation, feel free to come off of mute and let us know.
What is your next step after you're finished with your rotations?
Yeah, so you are guaranteed placement within the finance org at Google. So you can either go back to a previous rotation, or you can also look in our internal job site and apply for another role. And so Tony is already prepping all of us to get into the interviewing phase again, whether that's updating our resume, whether that's, getting back into the interviewing mindset. So, obviously in denial that I have a few months left with Tony, but he is making sure that we are going to lead off on the next best foot in our next step. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So kind of like reflecting upon your rotational program, which rotation would you say was your favorite and why?
Ooh, tough question. I think, and Tony, feel free to come off of mute. Something that Tony and I talked about from the very beginning is something that was really important to me, was just to understand how Google works as a business. And so I wanted to go to all of our core parts of the business, right? So I want to see internally behind the curtain, how do we work? I want to see how our ads work, how our product works. And so, I know it's a not helpful answer of what was your favorite rotation, but I honestly have to say, experiencing all the different parts made each of them my favorite rotation for different reasons. And I think in addition, just to kind of seeing how Google works, it's because the people at Google and at Google Finance are just so stellar. Everyone is so open, so welcoming, and so there to help you learn and enable you to grow. Really makes it hard to pick one.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I was going to say Krista has had a great view of several different parts of finance, and like each one is a little unique in and of itself. So it's really hard to comp them all against each other.
Any other questions? We'll have more time for Q&A in case any other ones pop up.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Tony, off to you.
Cool. Well, I'll take over and kind of start talking to you all a little bit about what's going on in finance, kind of how things are moving, how we think. And so I wanted to share this slide because it's just a very high level view of how we, imagine ourselves as finance partners within Google. So, if you all are accounting and finance majors, I'm sure many of you are wrestling between do I go into public accounting, or do I go and work at a financial services organization like an investment bank or a private equity firm or something of that nature, as well as do I go into corporate? And then when you think about corporate, what does that mean? How does that look? Are the opportunities the same? Will I learn as much? Will I make as much money? You've got all these questions that kind of float around with that. And historically, right, we've always, the financial services and public accounting have always kind of set themselves apart as kind of the place to be. But the thing that I'd encourage you all to really take a deeper look at corporate finance and accounting nowadays, because in many organizations, the finance and accounting roles have evolved greatly. And so the amount of impact that you can have at a very, very early, stage in your career is incredibly high. And without a lot of the kind of, I would say, old school, this is how we operate, this is what's going on, you just have to suck it up. And so in finance, our department, we view ourselves as such that you see on the screen. So someone that's an accelerator that can help drive insights, someone that can do the actual work, the operations, the compliance, the risk management, the record keeping, the reporting. But then also, how do you demonstrate leadership from your role? How do you work with your business partners? And then how do you continue to guard the organization so that it can grow into the future successfully? And those are the four things that we always try to like keep in mind as finance professionals. And it doesn't matter if you're a VP, a director, or if you're an entry-level analyst just coming into the organization. Those sets of responsibilities fall on you no matter what. And even with Krista being on a 6-month rotation program where you would think you're just kind of doing work for the sake of doing work or busy work or just kind of helping people along for that little bit of time. For instance, in her last role, I mean, she is the second analyst supporting, our Google One product. And so what that means is she's going to have a lot of opportunity to interact with the business team, to understand what's going on with the product, to help them move their agenda forward. And so that's the level of experience that you get in an organization like ours, because it's flat in so many other ways. If you want to think about organizational structure, so from organizational structure, Krista highlighted the controllership organization. I'm going to oversimplify our organization because when you start breaking into the real dynamics of the parts and the names, it can get a little bit, it can be a little bit messy unless we were like drawing it on the board and you all could like touch it and feel it. But at a very high level, you can imagine Google's finance team is organized as you see right here. So there's the Alphabet parent company, and we have this kind of overarching stewardship functions that service you, whether you're in Google or whether you're in Other Bets. And Other Bets is another title for our companies like Waymo or Verily that are offshoots of Google, that are making money on their own, and they're also subsidiary companies of the Alphabet parent. So tax, internal audit, treasury, M&A, our technical accounting, SOX teams, all of these functions are stewardship related functions that kind of oversee everybody. And then, but they help everybody, I should say, not oversee. And then within Google and within the Other Bets, you basically have two lines that are operating. You have the accounting for the business, which is inclusive of your accounting teams and your financial operations teams. That would be like accounts payable, payroll, etc. And then you have your business finance teams, which are comprised of what you would typically call like your FP&A analysts or your sales analysts or your business controllers even. They technically fall into the business of finance teams. And so you're just thinking about like the operational getting things done from the record keeping and recording versus the analytical sides of things, driving the insights, doing the risk mitigation work, working a little bit closer with the business. So that's the two pieces that you see sliding across there. Are there any questions about that in particular? Cool. So this is, again, just another kind of view of that world. We have about 2,500 Googlers in our organization right now, and we're continuing to grow. And so that's just a really cool part of our organization, but it's just restating what I had on the other slide, in a slightly different fashion here. Going into the rotation program, Krista summed it up very nicely. It's 2 years, 4 rotations, 6 months each. What you see at the bottom, if you can read it, is kind of our 4 areas of focus. And so when I think about you all's development and bringing in analysts and how to get them to the place to where they can be successful no matter what role they take in finance, at its very core, fundamentally, are an ability to work with data or provide analytics or insights, a full understanding of what compliance and controls is and how that works within Google, a strong financial or business acumen, and then lastly, a bias towards action that leads to doing things like process improvement and being able to kind of oversee processes and make sure that they're operating efficiently. So, as you go through your 4 rotations, I identify opportunities for all of our analysts that they get to touch something that relates to one of these 4 things. And it's not a 1-for-1 type situation. It's, you may do 3 of them in a rotation. You may do 4 of them in a rotation. You may do 1 of them in a rotation. It just kind of depends. But that is like the core focus of our of the work and the analysis that we do there. So on the next slide, again, just kind of highlighting the rotation program, we've got these three major areas that we really build your experience around. I call it the EQ philosophy, but it's education, experience, and exposure. So you just got a little taste of what the experience piece of it is, and knowing that you have these kind of focus areas and you get to work with a global team. On the education side, we've got training and development opportunities for everybody. So you'll come in, there's a robust onboarding program. We like to do a couple of development days throughout the year. And then also throughout the year, I will either recommend or require training classes for associates to take along the way. Then the last thing is the exposure, which is the networking with the teams that you support, as well as when we set up leadership syncs. So we'll have our VPs come talk to the associates, tell them about their careers, answer any questions that they have going on. And then there's access to mentorship programs as well.
And I will also just jump in here, and I will say this is something that Tony does really focus on. And one of the things I really appreciate too is with that experience, Tony also helps identify growth areas, right? So areas that you might not have had so much experience in, growth areas that you can continue to learn new skills in. And Tony's really amazing. And wherever you end up, make sure to always find a manager who really looks at your growth and helps align rotations. That allows you to become the analyst or helps you go into the type of role that you want to go into at the end of the program. So Tony might not mention that in this slide, but is also very important to know.
I appreciate that, Krista. I also appreciate the kind words. Yes, if you do, get a chance to become a part of the program, I will stretch you. I usually like to throw one rotation in there that's a little bit out of the box from maybe what you're anticipating. So if you tell me that you want to do something, there may be a landing spot that is kind of a preparation rotation for you to get to the place that you are ideally hoping to land at the end. So it's just to help round you out and give you the set of skills that is going to make you effective in the organization. On the next slide is the bold internship slide. So as you all are kind of thinking like, all right, this is cool, this sounds good, Google sounds great, where do I sign up? This is kind of the beginning step. So if you are a sophomore or a freshman, this probably pertains the most to you. If you are a current junior, you are going to be outside of the opportunity to apply for the bold internship as the application period has passed. And if you are a senior, unfortunately, our hiring cycle has passed for full-time employees, but for those juniors, you can look out for our full-time posting when it comes up in the fall. But for freshmen and sophomore, the BOLD program, which you can find at google.com/students, more details on, is the true entree into non-technical roles at Google. So not everybody is an engineer. You don't have to go follow that path in order to make it to Google. And we actually have internships for non-technical roles, whether you want to be in sales, whether you want to be in marketing, product management, HR, and of course, finance. We've got a spot for you. And so in your freshman year, there's not much you can do other than to familiarize yourself with Google. There's little interesting ways that if you want to kind of get into the Google ecosystem, you can do that. You can do that either through the training programs that Krista had mentioned earlier, which are on Coursera. You can also do it by becoming a part of our Google for, well, it's not no longer called Google for Nonprofits. It's like nonprofits. It's like Google Workspace for Nonprofits, I think is the new name. They just changed it. But essentially we have a part of our organization that works through ads, where we provide free ads budgets to nonprofit organizations. And there are ways that you, as not being a part of Google or even not being a part of those nonprofits, can actually go and obtain ads revenue so that you can work with a nonprofit and help them develop a marketing campaign. And so there's things like this that are out there that if you just do a little bit of light searching, or if you go onto our websites and actually go to the company side of the google.com website, you can start to surface up some of this information and find interesting ways even as early as your freshman year to kind of get involved, get integrated into the Google ecosystem, which is not a must-have by any means. It is not something you have to do, but it is a nice to have that if you're trying to continue to beef up your resume, it's one way you can do it. As a sophomore, you have the opportunity to apply to our BOLD immersion program. So you see BOLD internship here, but there's BOLD immersion, IMMERSION, which is a kind of all-intensive 1 week experience where you get to come to Google. A lot of times they will put you in residence if you need it. You spend all day with other people from other students from across the country. You have lunch, you meet people from different teams across Google. It's a fun time. You learn all about the organization. And the great thing about BOLD immersion, and this happens at right before the start of your junior year. So you apply your sophomore year to participate in it at the end of the summer, right before your junior year begins. The great thing about this is it gives you a skip the line. So when you want to apply to the BOLD internship program in your junior year, because we open up all our applications in the fall, people who participate in BOLD immersion actually have a first shot at the internships. They're the first ones to interview. So you can you learn a ton about Google, which you take that information, you carry that with you into the interview, and you impress everybody, and hopefully you lock down your internship before we can interview anybody else. And so it's a really cool thing to participate in the immersion program when you're applying for BOLD internship. But even if you don't get into the immersion program, because it is a very small and competitive program, everyone can apply to the BOLD internship. You do so at the beginning of your junior year, that fall. The internship would happen between your junior and senior years in college. That's kind of the essence of that. And like I said, there's tons of information of it at google.com/students. Any questions about that in particular? Cool. Why don't we talk a little bit about the internship? Well, I said talk the internships, the interview experience. So when you're applying for an internship, it's a very simple 3-step process. There's a Google Hangout interview. So once your application is accepted and reviewed by our intern team, so the initial process does not come through me. It's actually run by our BOLD intern program. They keep a very high bar that they look at all resumes across the world that apply to all the internships. So they keep a very high bar and they ensure that the best students move through that process and into the next piece. And when I say all of those superlatives, that does not mean to get nervous and get scared and not apply. Like, just put your best foot forward and apply. You just never know what's going to happen. But those resumes that get reviewed and then get brought in for a hangout interview. So we usually have a first round interview set that's usually between a screen with the HR person and or another finance person, and then a final follow-up interview. And that's it. And then after that, we go through the process of reviewing the feedback from those conversations. And if everything aligns and everything looks good, then an offer is extended. So you'll have no more than 2 interviews with a finance person, and you'll probably have a conversation with someone from our HR people operations team right just prior to those 2 finance interviews. Super simple process, not crazy. You're not meeting 100 people. We don't ask you 1,000 questions.
Also, one other thing to note is that there might be some roles that you cannot apply for a specific BOLD internship to. They might just have you apply for the BOLD internship broadly, and then based off of your experience and based off of where they see you fit, they might place you for a specific role within that BOLD internship program.
That's a great call out, Krista. I'll give you a prime example. So we have one person in our rotation program who's a marketing major. It just so happened that by luck, chance, whatever, the internships they had prior to coming to Google, they had 2 internships, both in finance. And so they were trying to slide over to the marketing side of Google, but the BOLD team directed them to finance because they had 2 internships in finance, even though they were a marketing major. They did a phenomenal job coming into the finance team that summer and supported the team really well. and ultimately got a return offer to come back to finance. And I had a very direct conversation with them of like, hey, you know, do you really want to go to marketing, or was finance fun enough that you're cool like pursuing this? And they said, you know, actually I kind of like this. And so they came back to me. And so we're in finance and they're doing a fantastic job. So yes, there is a chance that you may want one side and they may push you to another based on your experience. The process when you're applying directly to a full-time role does not change much. There's about, I would say, 2 more conversations that you would have um, uh, from that standpoint. So instead of just one conversation with the bold intern team and then 2 finance interviews over video, what you have now, and when you come in and apply for a full-time role, is a recruiter will speak to you just to kind of like chat with you about what's going on, update you on the process, and then they'll usually set you up with, now we've kind of limited down to only 1 phone interview. There was a few couple years ago, we were doing potentially 2. Now, as of last year, we eliminated the second phone interview and only do 1 phone interview. And then based on the results of that interview, we'll move you forward to an on-site interview. Now, during COVID, those were still virtual interviews. So we did them over video chat. If things are back in office and kind of moving as normal this next fall, if everything is safe, you'll probably have the option to opt into a in-person interview or a virtual interview, depending on your preference, you know, given all that's going on right now. But that on-site interview is usually kind of like, you know, some organizations call them super days, or, you know, batch interview days, where you come in and you meet with, you know, 3 or 4 people, and then at the completion of it, it's done. And so you'll do a 1 day on site. You'll have up to 3 interviews. After that's complete, we'll do a committee review, check out all the candidates that we feel strongly about, and then an offer is extended. So again, just one more step added into the process for full-time, which when you do an internship, you do not have to interview. So when you complete an internship, we base whether or not you get an offer on your performance during the internship. Cool. Just so you have some insight on what we look for, we care about how you think. We like seeing leadership skills. So again, this is just another thing to call out. Don't feel like because you weren't, you know, an officer of a club like FMA or your student body, that means you don't have leadership. No, leadership skills can be assessed through the interview process to understand like how you work with others, how you work within teams, you know, what are the responsibilities that you've taken on while you've been in college. And so do not feel that because you're not holding a leadership role, you can't apply it to Google. Role-related knowledge means, you know, what is your finance and accounting like general acumen? We don't, you know, put you through a highly technical interview where we're asking things like, how do you do this journal entry? Or how do the financial statements link up? Or, you know, what is WAC? That's not going to be the line of questioning that you're going to get. You're going to get something that's a little bit more along the lines of, you know, here's the situation. How do you think about it? Tell me a little bit about it. And we want to hear in there how you can integrate some of your accounting and finance knowledge into that conversation. And then last is googliness, which, you know, gets some people a little bit nervous. But at the end of the day, it's just an understanding of how you are as an individual and how you show up. Googliness doesn't mean that you have to fit a particular mode. Googliness is a general idea, a concept of, you know, working well with others. It's about being collaborative and, you know, navigating ambiguity. It's not about like, oh, you have to have a particular uh, feeling about political issues, or that you need to come from a particular background, or you need to be able to laugh at certain jokes or whatever, anything like that. Like none of those classifications are what define googliness. All right. Any other questions there about any of that?
I had a quick question.
Yeah,
I had
sure.
a question about your rotational program. So I noticed that you mentioned the internship and stuff. Is the internship mostly like a feeder into the rotational program, or do you accept people into the rotational program that have interned somewhere else?
Yes. So great question. We do right now. I have indexed on increasing our investment in our internship program. So the majority of the people that we get that come into the rotation program first obtain an internship in our finance team. We usually always have a couple of headcount left at the end, so that people who have interned elsewhere can apply and also apply for the role. So there's always a couple of headcount left. But I really want to encourage people to come into our organization early and get that exposure and really get a good sense of like, is Google for me? I would rather you all have a very clear picture of that and understand that and be able to make a very thoughtful decision versus making a decision that's kind of like, oh, Google sounds like great. Let me just see if this works out. So it's highly encouraged for you to apply to the internship program. But again, do not be discouraged. There's always a couple more roles left to apply for a full-time role.
That sounds great. Thank you. And if I could just follow up, I was wondering when the applications open for your
Yes.
rotational program.
Yes, so the applications open up in the early fall. So I typically try to get everything out there by the second week of September at the latest. So one of the great things you can do on our career site is you can actually set an alert on there, and our role title is Associate Finance Analyst. And so if you put in Associate Financial Analyst, then anytime that pops up on Google Careers, you're going to see it. And there's about a 90+% chance that it's going to be a job for the rotation program.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So a question kind of just touching upon what you just said. As a junior, I'm a little kicking myself a little bit right now for not applying to the internship last year. But are new grad roles specifically only for the rotational program, or do you have like associate financial analyst roles that are not part of the program?
We have a couple of roles that are under that title that are not a part of the program. But those people that come into those roles are still a part of the same community. So one of the things that I've done over the last couple of years and I'll walk back and give you all a little bit of history. So finance as an organization did not hire people directly out of college up until 5 years ago. And so over that time, it started with this program being stood up. It was another program manager who ran it for about 2 years, and then I took over for them. And so when I took over, I made it basically push it out across the entire department, grew the program, we grew the headcount and everything else that's happened in the last 4 years. But the really cool thing is other teams I should say this, the demand for our entry-level analysts is much higher than the supply. So I still don't have enough headcount yet to meet the demand. And so what's happened is some teams have decided to allocate headcount out of their own individual functions to hire junior analysts. And so what we do is, as they hire analysts to support them directly, they become a part of our rotation community. So it's basically the early career analyst community.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of like it's based off like a question I have too. So I think you did mention you need 2 to 3 years of experience before you do apply to the rotational program. So does that mean like we have to work somewhere else and then like apply to this program later on in our careers if we do choose to do so?
No, actually, you need 0 years of experience to apply to the program. I think there was a point on the slide in there that was actually related to. I realized that one of the slides was pulled from another presentation where we were talking about multiple roles, and so you might have seen that as one of the bullet points in there on one of the slides. But there's no prior work history requirement. You don't even, and I'll say this, you don't necessarily have to have had, some fancy internship before applying either. We had someone who got all the way to the very ends of the process and was literally at the fringe of making making the program. And unfortunately, we didn't get full alignment on her, but she worked at Starbucks for the entire time she was in college, but was sharp, showed up the right way, and knew her stuff, and got all the way to literally like, the very ends of the decision making process, and almost crossed over. And we were looking for another role, but she had a competing offer with another company, and so she accepted that offer before we can find another option for her. But yeah, and so that's again why I don't discourage anyone from applying. My thing is like shoot your best shot and just see what happens.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I was a bit confused.
Yeah, no.
And to also speak from that too, like if you look at my resume, I do not by any means have a typical finance profile. Like my first real finance job was my first one out of college, because before that it was mostly entertainment based. So, I know for me, especially in college, I put a ton of pressure on myself to get that get that perfect job first out of college, but know that there's no perfect job right out of college. There's so many things to learn that will eventually become your perfect job. And so even if you want to pivot industries, know that you can out of college. Like you are not locked and loaded into one area. Just, keep on learning those skills. You will have to do the work, obviously, but keep on learning those skills, keep developing yourself. And I guarantee if like a pivot is something that you want to do, like you can make it happen.
Great point.
I actually had a question regarding the rotational program as well. So,
Mhm.
like, does Google's finance rotational program require knowledge of any like technical platforms such as SAP or anything like that, or like Excel or Google Sheets or anything like that?
Yeah. No, I would definitely encourage you all to at least have a solid grasp of Excels or spreadsheets before you apply to the program. It's one of those things that's simple that you can do, that you'll learn through any of hopefully you'll learn them in your classes, but you do not have to be an expert. Um, that is about the extent of what I would ask you to do before you come to Google. If you've got Excel or you know how to use Google Sheets, that's a great first step. Everything else will teach you. And to your question about like the platforms we do use SAP. And so that is one that if you have experience with it, fantastic. But again, you do not need to know a thing about SAP. We will teach you once you get here. SQL is another program. So it's a coding language that we generally, most of our financial analysts use to extract data and then use that data to, find insights, solve problems, answer questions. And so if you have some SQL experience, that's great. But again, not required at all. We'll put you through the classes and we'll teach you how to use it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So did you say there was any opportunities for upcoming seniors, or is it just like sophomores and juniors?
So if you're a rising senior, so you've got one more year left, the best thing you can do is to go to our career site, put in an alert for associate financial analyst as a role. And then when that role opens up, you'll get an email from Google saying, hey, this role is opened up. Feel free to submit your application. Now, I will give you all a heads up right now. If you do that right now, you will see a job pop up, but that job is for Dublin. So unless you have work authority to actually work in Dublin, Ireland, then I would say don't apply. So unless you want to live and work in Dublin and you have the work authority to do so, don't apply to that role. But just keep an eye out for it. We open it up in the fall.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I just have one quick question. So now you guys have been immersed in the finance world and in Google. What is something you guys know about finance that you wish you knew when applying?
Chris, is there anything that you had?
Oh, so many. Like I said before, I did not have the traditional finance background. And so I was super intimidated by finance because I thought it was going to be, like Tony said, WAC was like the one acronym to me. I was like, I got it. Like you guys like finance, like, well, you have the acronyms for my finance college course down. That is not what corporate finance is. Like, yes, you will encounter those words. That is, you will not be calculating NPV every single minute of every single day. I see a few giggles. Yeah, it's, so I wish I just knew that it was that. I also wish, I think this is more so like a broader career thing out of college, is you aren't expected to know everything when you graduate from college. If anything, being a blank slate, understanding core concepts and understanding how your company works is a better place to be in, because you are more teachable, you're more coachable, and it's easier to pick up those skills. So I think, to me, you know, like I said, it's not going to be your finance class that you had in college. You will have core concepts from it, but really just be open, take the time to learn. Like Tony said, they took us in our first month through SQL classes, through SAP classes, you know, through, a lot of people were like, I don't know how Google Sheets works. I've used Excel every single day since I've ever used anything like that, you know, the transition over to Google products. So they will teach you a lot. I hope that answers your question.
That was a great answer, Krista. You must have learned from somebody that was smart.
Yeah, I have no idea who. I heard his name is Tony. But yes, NPV is not what you will do every single day, which is false advertising.
Just to throw one quick thing, like you know, I entered Google in a different place than you did, but if I rewind the clock back to like my first job, you learn everything. I can just, that's the biggest thing that I learned. I knew nothing about what I was doing. I didn't know what transfer pricing was really, and that's what I went into at Pricewaterhouse. And they just take you in, they do everything. And one more layer to Chris's fabulous point is that you know, you getting good grades in school is basically a barometer for a hiring manager to say, oh, is this person responsible enough that they're going to get the work done, right? I mean, sure, there's some indication in there of like, oh, you know, you can assume this person has got some level of intelligence, but that's not 100% either. So, but what a good grades typically indicate is like usually if you got a good work ethic. It means that you're willing to, you know, to put the time in, and then everything else kind of spills out from that. And so it just gives a hiring manager an ability to say, okay, this person's reasonably responsible. I think I can bring them into my organization. But you can demonstrate that in so many other ways. And so, you know, again, Krista hit it right on the head. Being someone with good core knowledge, but is a blank slate and willing to learn is an ideal candidate.
Question. I remember you earlier, Tony, you emphasized that you guys like to see people who've really understood Google's company culture and like they believe that they're a good fit. They really want to work at Google. So as a junior, I don't really have the opportunity to have an internship with Google. So what would be some of the ways that you would recommend students like me to kind of get to know Google's company culture better?
Honestly, the easiest way to do it is YouTube. So you hop on YouTube right now. We've got some awesome videos. It's like I think I can't remember it. Krista, maybe you can chime in. Is it like How We Work or something like that?
Yeah, it's actually one of my old coworkers from whenever I was over in the POPs organization who is in those videos. And what he is in those videos is exactly who he is in real life. He's also a DJ on the side. So he's like one of the most interesting men in the world. But yes, it is How We Work at Google. They also have a really great group of videos of how to interview, how to look at your resume, how to answer the questions in the interviews. And I can tell you, as somebody who went through the interview process, they are not lying. Like it is the best information that you can get. And so definitely go check that out. They have a lot of helpful tips and tricks, and as well as Tony mentioned, the culture.
Yep. That's it. You don't have to be like anything else special. Just like, oh yeah, this feels good. I like it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So you guys are sure they're not actors?
No, they're
Positive.
not.
I can promise.
Yeah, even that data cert, like if you go to Coursera and you pull up the data analyst cert, you'll see me. So I'm here now. You'll see me there. So it's
Tony's
cool.
a celebrity, you guys. So we were very lucky to have him here tonight.
My schedule's so busy. I don't know what I'm
Yeah.
doing.
But also going back to the culture thing, like attending chats like these too, where you're talking to real Google employees, I feel like Tony and I can be very authentic. It gives you a little bit more insight into what people are like there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had another question too. Before that, I was gonna add that for all members, I dropped a link in the chat of a YouTube video of an intern's first week if you guys want to check that out. But I'm sure the insights here have been great also. But my question here was actually, Tony, you mentioned that interns don't have an interview before the transition to a full-time role if they are accepted. And I was gonna ask, how does an intern exemplify characteristics that like actually make them stand out to you, that you would want to continue with them?
So I'll tell you like this, you don't have to stand out. You just have to do your job well. We only bring in enough interns. So we don't bring in more interns than roles we have to fill. So if I've got, 15 roles to fill, I might bring in 12 interns. And so that allows me the flexibility to make sure that I can hire every single person that gets an internship. You're not competing against one another. You don't need to stand out. You can be an introvert, but be crazy, wicked smart at like SQL or accounting or something and just do a really good job. Or you could be a super extrovert and figure out how to like, shake all the hands and kiss all the babies and make everybody fall in love with you. It doesn't really matter. So there's nothing that you got to do uniquely to stand out. Just come in. If you get that opportunity, you just focus on doing the job well. And that's it.
Great. That's definitely a great answer because I'm sure that's going to relieve a lot of people.
Yeah. Yes, no stack ranking, no fighting against one another. I want all our interns to be friends. I want them to get along with each other, not trying to sabotage one another, help each other out, because that's how it is when you're actually there when you're working at Google.
Of course.
So I have a quick question about the Coursera course that you guys offer. So I know, Tony, you touched upon that course offering. Can you describe it a little more in depth, please?
I'll do my best. So if you go to Coursera and you look up the Google certificates, there's I think 2 live options right now. There's the IT certificate, which is if you want to go more the engineering route. And then there is the data analyst certificate, which is exactly as it describes. Data analysts don't necessarily aren't always in finance, but our financial analysts do a lot of similar things that data analysts do, which is why they asked me to help them plan it out, because they wanted the certificate itself to be diverse enough so that it can cover a lot of different functional areas. So whether you're going into an area working with researchers or data scientists, you can do that. Whether you're going into business operations and you're running, some quantitative analytics, or if you could be in finance. And so they want to make sure that can hit multiple disciplines. So what it teaches you in the data analyst certificate is about like SQL and R. Those are the 2 programming languages, and it teaches you how to go through the analytical thinking process. So, what do I need to look for? What do I need to consider? How do I engage with stakeholders? How do I produce something of high quality? So it takes you through how to think like an analyst, some of the technical skills required to be a successful analyst. And then at the very end of it, it actually talks about careers in data analytics. And it gives you some information and resources so that you can either contact someone at Google or at other companies and organizations that have partnered with Google to support people that have completed the program. You go to the Coursera site, you can watch the intro video for free. If you decide to sign up, it's $40 a month. The recommended time frame is 6 months, but you can actually do it within 2 to 3 months. So the 6-month time frame means, I believe, you're only investing, I think, 10 hours a week to get it done in 6 months. So if you can invest 10 hours a week, you'll get it done in 6 months. If you can do 20 hours a week, you'll get it done in 3 months or a little less.
Can you please, Anthony, can you please put the link in the chat box so we can have that information?
It is, let's see, I am on my phone, so it's hard for me. There you
Oh,
go. Go
sorry.
with Google. That's it. Perfect. But yep,
Okay.
the link is there. Any other questions?
Yeah, are you guys active on LinkedIn by chance? Because I'm sure the members would love to connect with you and learn more.
I am active. I will say I get a fair number of requests and emails, so I do my best to catch up with people at times. So with me, it's a little bit like, again, it's like take your shot and see what happens. So if you shoot me a note and I happen to have like an afternoon where I can actually go in and start responding to messages, I will. I'll just go in and just start responding to people. It just, be patient. It may take me a little bit of time.
I'm the same with Tony. I was not as active on it as I was in college, but
All right, great.
Cool. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure. Like I said, I really want to encourage everyone, don't be scared of applying to Google. Or, I mean, if you're feeling like, this maybe isn't the right time for me, that's okay. Your path is your own. So just make good decisions, follow your gut and just keep striving for whatever your goals are.
yeah, thank you guys so much for having us, and thanks for bearing with our Zoom technology acumen to all of this. So I promise
Yeah.
if this is on Google Hangouts, we would be all over it. But
It'd
thank you
be
guys for bearing
smooth.
with us. And I will make
Request.
one more plug, you guys, for that YouTube channel. Again, not paid actors. That was a wonderful follow-up question. But they really do have super helpful videos on how to handle the interviews, how to master the interviews, and all that stuff. So definitely don't discount those.
Great. I was just going to request that before we leave, I'm going to stop the recording and I'm actually going to request we take a picture, a group picture, because we do it weekly with everyone.